Hi, this is Dada Groover, and welcome to The Inspired Writer. Last week, I shared a few things about my writing journey, and I had some requests to share more, so that's what today is going to be about. And not just what happened and I did this and that, but what I've really learned from it. Here we go. As usual, I would love it if you click that subscribe button and ring that little bell, and you will be notified of any videos that come. I'm going to share a little more detail with you about what it was like writing my book, Different. This is my first book, my first novel, and as you may already know, if you've seen some of my other videos, it did win some awards. It specifically won 12 literary awards. And some of those were for independent publishing only, and some of them were open to both the big shot, and I'm being a little sarcastic, to the big shot traditional publishers as well as indie publishers. This was a self-published book, and I'm very happy with how it came out, how we did it, and I'm going to share with you some of my realizations around writing that book and some of the things that happened. One of the biggest surprises was how much work it actually took. And I have been under contract with a publisher years past. My first contract was with the publisher that I'm not going to name. This is me biting my tongue. I'm not going to name the publisher. They decided, their finance people, and I've said this in another video, so you might be getting a repeat, but their finance people said, yeah, we're going to make more money on nonfiction this year. We got too many fiction titles. Dump some of them. And they just came back to me and said, yep, you are no longer, we're no longer going to publish your fiction book, but, we give you all rights to your contract. Great. How generous of them. Anyway, that's what happened with my first book, and that was many years ago, and it was a little bit discouraging, and I let it discourage me. I let it stop me from writing for quite a few years. And I picked up writing again more. So that was in the 90s. I was writing that long ago. I know some of you were just maybe in high school then, but that was in the 90s. And I stopped for almost 10 years, and I started writing again in 2006. 2006, I started writing again and started working on my memoir. And, as you may have heard me say before, I did have the opportunity to write articles that I was paid for. For example, I wrote an article in the San Francisco Chronicle. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. I wrote this article about this treasure ship that had sunk, a treasure ship. It was hauling what, in today's value, millions of dollars worth of gold up the California coast. It sank off the coast of California near Crescent City, and it was never recovered. Many people lost their lives. A few people survived, but most everyone lost their lives, and they never found the ship. It was in very deep water. Anyway, long story short, I wrote this article about the ship, and as a result of the article, somebody was able to get funding for it, say, hey, look, they got interest in other people, and they found the ship, they recovered the gold, and funny enough, they probably didn't think it was funny, but after recovering the gold, the state of California claimed it, and there's a whole legal battle over salvage rights here and there. But what was inspiring to me was that an article I wrote had so much effect. People read the article, and again, it went to, it got in the hands of investors, and people said, yeah, let's do this thing. Let's get excited. And what else happened? The same article in the same paper, in the San Francisco Chronicle, somebody read that and said, oh, this would make a great book. And they made a book out of it. Which I didn't know anything about. No one asked me for permission, whatever. It was, it was an article. It is public information. I don't have any issue with that. I was looking through the newspaper for some reason. I was looking for something in Southern Oregon. I lived in Ashland, Oregon. This was in the mid-2000s. And I saw this, lecture about the book Treasure Ship. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what treasure ship they're talking about. And I read a little more about it. It's like, oh, they're talking about the brother Jonathan, which is the name of the ship. And so I went to see this lecture. I hear this lecture, and it was all about that. He was giving all this information about the ship and the book he wrote, and I thought, wow, this is really fascinating. I went up to talk to the guy and said, yeah, that was really, I really liked your presentation. And I wrote an article once, because I'd written the article some time before. I wrote an article about that, and he says, oh, yeah, that's nice. Where? I said, oh, San Francisco Chronicle. He said, really? He said, who are you? I said, my name's Dada Groover. He goes, no way. He said, I read your article, and I was so inspired, I wrote a book. So that one article inspired this guy to write this book, and I bought the book and I read it, and it's like, some of this sounds like my article. It was okay. I wasn't totally tweaked about it, but I thought it was very interesting, and I took it as kind of a kick in the pants that Dada, you should have written the book. And yes, I was busy with other things. I was building my business, and I had a lot of stuff going on, and it was a choice, but it could have been my choice to write that book. And yeah, it was just a little nudge. Call it a nudge from the universe. But, what I really loved about it is we had those two pretty substantial results from that one article. And yeah, and I've written other articles and I've really enjoyed it. I've done professional editing. I worked for a publishing house, and I enjoyed helping writers be their best self. I really enjoyed doing that. I did it because I was a little desperate for money. When I was under contract, the contract with the publishing house that I'm not going to name because they killed the contract on me. They also said, hey, we need some editing help, with nonfiction. And I was a little desperate. I wanted the money, so I said, sure, I'll do it. And I thought this is going to be really boring, and it wasn't. It was very exciting because I was helping someone else with their creative work. So I really, really enjoyed that. And this is something I believe about writing, about editing, about any creative endeavor. It is natural to ourselves, it is natural to our souls, if you will. And I believe it's very fulfilling and will make us happy. And this concept, I've heard many people say this concept that some people are creative, some people are not. I've heard people say, I'm not creative. I do not believe it. I believe everyone is creative. But some of us have said, we've told ourselves that we're not creative. I'm not creative. And then they believe it. Or somebody else has told us. Our parents have told us that. Or you need to do this. You need to do that if you want to be successful and happy in life. And I absolutely disbelieve that. So I really enjoy doing the editing work. And I love writing. Sometimes writing can be a little tedious because there's a lot of things to work out, to go over something again and again to where it's where you want it to be. It can be a little tedious, but most of the time I am really enjoying it a lot. And you may have heard me on other videos talk about the layering method. And the layering method means I'll go through a book layer by layer. So with different, I spent dozens of layers going through this. So I would go through the whole book. I wrote the book in 4 days. And and then when I say I wrote it, I made the first draft, the rough draft, call it a rough draft. And then it took me a year of revision to get the book to where I wanted. Now that is one way of writing. It's not what everyone has to do. It's not what you should do, but it's one way of doing it. And it worked out very well for me. In my experience, both from my own direct experience and also working with others, when you do it that way, it is more fun and it helps the creative juices flow. It definitely works like that for me, and I do believe it works like that for others as well. So this is something to try. And by layering, I mean, you don't go into the first chapter and finish it, and then you go to the second chapter and you finish it. It tends to make things, how do you say it? It's rigid. in my experience. It tends to make things very rigid. So doing the layering just makes it a lot more enjoyable. And, sometimes we do work against deadlines. Like when I was writing articles, they would want the article done by a certain time. They're paying me to complete this by a certain time. Agents want the book done by a certain time because the publisher is demanding a certain timetable. And sometimes it's what's got to be done. And right now there is a trend, like a lot of writers, take James Patterson. He is actually the highest earning author in the world right now, from what I've read. And he makes over, and this is just what I've read, so I can't verify it. I'm not his accountant, but $300 million per year. That's a lot of money. And he writes 10 to 12 books per year to do that. He writes very quickly, and a lot of people do that. Stephen King does the same thing. You'd think with the amount of money he makes per book, he wouldn't need to write so many books, but he does. And many people do this. Many people who have established their writing as a business. For me, it's going to take a year to write a book the way I want to write it. And again, that's, going over it, layering. I enjoy the writing process. I enjoy it being creative. I enjoy what comes up with subsequent layers. And I'm not saying it's the only way, but if you are a writer and you want to enjoy your writing more, try doing it that way, where you do the draft, the first draft, the rough draft, whatever you want to call it, and then the next draft, you're just going a little deeper. You're getting some of the dialogue down. You're getting the interaction between the characters. And what I believe happens is then you will get insight as to how the characters are going to interact, how they're going to talk to each other, and so on. And it's kind of a fun process doing it that way. And that's been my experience, especially if you don't have a deadline. If you have a deadline, you might need to go through those layers more quickly. Now, one thing I do once I get the first layer done, second, third, I might go through 4 or 5 layers. And then when it starts getting readable, where I call okay, I'm starting to enjoy how this book is coming together, I've gone through everything on screen. Like I'm looking at my computer screen. I use Scrivener, which most of the professional authors I know use Scrivener. I could do another video about that. Scrivener helps me be more creative. It helps me organize my book in a way so I can visually see exactly what is connected to what's under what. I can move stuff around much more than I can with a program like Microsoft Word. I love Scrivener. Many other people do. I'm not going to get into, again, why. If you want to find out more about Scrivener, search it on YouTube. There are tons of videos. Or, if I was speaking grammatically correctly, I would say there were a lot of videos. But no, there are tons of videos on YouTube about Scrivener, so you can find out all about it. And I highly do recommend you find out about it. Anyway, so I'll go through it, and I'll go through it many times, different layers, until what I consider it's readable in the sense that it's enjoyable for me to read. And even though I've gone through it many times, I want to love what I read. I want to enjoy it every time. If I don't, I want to see if I'm doing something wrong or if it's going in a direction that I don't want. This is very important to me. So yes, I want to have fun while I'm writing, and I also believe if I am enjoying reading it, then you as the reader are going to enjoy reading it as well. So I'll go through a certain number of passes with that. Like I did here, I probably went through, I don't know, I didn't count them, maybe 25 passes all the way through the book, the whole written book, 25 times on the screen, and then I make it an ebook, which there's a program called Calibre, and that's the English or Australian spelling of Calibre, CALIBRE.org. And it's a free program you can download, and then you just basically, my process is I export to Word, Microsoft Word, from Scrivener, and then I import that into Calibre. The whole process I can do in 5 minutes, and then I have an ebook that I can put right on my Kindle. And when it's on my Kindle, I may do a silent read on it where I'm just reading it like I'm reading any other Kindle, depending what I think I'm going to get the most out of. And then I'll do a read aloud. So I have a color Kindle, and the color Kindles will read aloud to you. Very interesting trick. The black and white Kindles will not. The color Kindles will. They'll read aloud. So, and it's much better. By the way, Microsoft Word will read aloud. It's, in my opinion, it's a terrible voice. And it's so unrealistic, it doesn't help me much. And I love the Kindle because it can read to me. And as it reads to me, I read it at 1.5 speed normal. And as it reads to me, I watch the words. And I find a lot of things that I didn't see on screen. And then I take notes on the Kindle. So the Kindle, if you touch the word, and then you can make it a different color. I use a certain color code, like certain words I take out. If it's red, if it's blue, then it's going to be, I need to grammatically correct that. If it's yellow, it means there's a note, and I can say whatever I want. I might add a sentence, and I'll just put it right there in my Kindle. And the Kindle does voice the text. So I can say, add this sentence about whatever it is. Say if I was writing a book on writing. And then that's there. And then when I integrate, so I integrate the whole thing back into my Scrivener. And then I start the process again. Then I'll do the screen reading again. And I'll go through that maybe once, maybe twice, depending. And then I will export it again to Microsoft Word. This might sound like a lot, but it actually goes pretty smoothly. And I print it out. I print it out. I've had one of my environmentally conscious friends say, yeah, but that uses up paper. And you know what? It does. But if you're going to write books, they are printed on paper. And paper does come from trees. And you're going to have to come to terms with that unless you do ebook only. In my experience, a lot of people want to have the physical copy. They want to have a paper copy, and that has not changed over the last few years. And is close from the numbers I've been told. Again, I can't verify them, but what I've read in several places is that right now, ebook purchases and paperback purchases are roughly equal. They're in the same ballpark. And sometimes one goes up, one goes a little bit down. But again, if you're going to write, that is something you're going to have to come to terms with, in my opinion. Yeah. So when I put it, when I print it out, right? I print it out on my printer. You could also do it at a print shop, at Office Max or Staples or one of those places. And when I print it out, I have one of these plastic binders. I got this little binder thing at a garage sale. It does this comb binder. There's different ways to do it. And I read the whole thing word for word. And surprise, surprise, I find things that I didn't catch with the Kindle. So I catch different things. Plus, and this is really interesting, so talking about layers, every time you fix something, so let's just say, so forget about the Kindle for a minute, doing the ebook version of it. Forget about, for now, doing the printed version. When I look at the screen and I change something, I adjust something to make it better, and I only want to change something to make it better, not to make it more correct. If it affects me more, if it makes me feel more, I'm going to make the change. If it doesn't, then I'm going to tend to not do it, right? I don't want to just fiddle and fiddle and fiddle. And people do that. They just fiddle around with stuff forever. And sometimes they make the book not as good by doing too much fiddling. So I'm only going to make a change if I make it better, if I feel that this is going to be better with this. And a lot of times, this is one of the hardest things about writing for me, and I know for other people as well, is sometimes I will take something out if it does not serve the book. It might be the best chapter, and I might have worked a lot of time on that, and it's so good. I really like it. Every time I read that chapter, it gives me goosebumps. I'm speaking hypothetically, but sometimes that's true. And if it doesn't serve the book, I will kill it. I will take it out. And it's hard for me to do that, but I believe that for the good of the book, sometimes we have to sacrifice a chapter. For the good of a chapter, we might have to sacrifice a paragraph or a few paragraphs, and so on and so forth. Sometimes you have to kill part of your beloved book to make it better. So every time I read through it, I will find something new. So I could literally go through a book and I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to make this final. It's going to be finished. I'll go through the whole book and I'll take things out. I'll add things. I'll change the word order if it's going to make it better. And then I'll go through it again and I'll find other stuff that I didn't see. So what I believe happens is when you get certain things out of the way, then other things become visible that were not really visible. That's why I think layering is very important. To go over the whole thing and you find stuff, and then you go to another layer, you find other things, you add other things, and that's the process. That's a lot of my writing process. I'm very happy with how Different came out. I'm very happy with the feedback I've gotten from Different. And right now, my second book, The Reluctant Visionary, is going out to agents. I've sent it out to, 5 or 6 agents already this week, and I'm going to send it out to more agents the rest of this week and see what happens. I'm enthusiastic about it. I figure I calculated I've done over 100 passes through that book. Yeah, that's a lot. But for me, it was totally worth it. It was a fun process. I really enjoyed it. And it got to the point where after going over it 100 times, remember reading it 100 times, sometimes on Kindle, sometimes on the screen, sometimes in written form, in printed out form, I never got tired of reading it. I enjoyed reading it. It excited me every time I read it, and I found it interesting. And that is the kind of book that I want to write, and that's the kind of writing process that I want to do. So I have fun with it all the way along. So Different, if you want to pick up a copy, they are on Amazon. I got to do my sales pitch. Our marketing is going to yell at me. No, they won't. But anyway, Different is on Amazon, and it's if you just go if you put in Different and you put in Dada Groover, you'll find it. There's there's different books with the name Different in them, so you come up with a lot of things if you just put in Different, and that's it. And yes, I would love it if you read it. And here's the thing: if you read my book, if you've bought it before, if you buy it now, I am open. And I welcome and I encourage you to ask any question about, like, why did you write this part, or why did this happen? How did you come up with this idea? Whatever you want to ask, I would love to answer in the questions below. Feel free. I know some of you have read my book already, so feel free to ask me any questions. Also, if you'd like any clarifications about anything that we've talked about today, I would love your questions for that too. And please don't forget to click subscribe, ding that little bell, and you'll get the notifications. This is Dada Groover, and it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.